Hello and welcome. On behalf of everyone at Holistic Billing Services, I want to thank you for joining me today for our Billing with ICD-10 for Acupuncture webinar. For those of you unfamiliar with Holistic Billing Services, we offer billing and consulting services specifically to acupuncturists and have done so for over 15 years. My name is Lora Sahyoun. I am a provider advocate at Holistic Billing Services. I hold a degree in healthcare administration and am a certified professional coder. At Holistic Billing Services, we realize how important healing others is for acupuncture providers. And while our clients focus on what's important to them, we focus on teaching them how to grow their practice. Our experience with acupuncture physicians is that they typically fall into three categories. One, they never knew they could bill insurance companies and have no prior billing experience. Two, have tried billing themselves and given up. Or three, bill successfully and have increased practice revenue. I hope to provide you today with information that will lead you to becoming a successful, diversified practice. I want to talk to you today about ICD-10 and how it will impact your practice. To truly understand ICD-10 as a requirement for billing, we feel it's important to have an understanding of the revenue cycle and insurance billing. Today we will cover the revenue cycle, the pros and cons of insurance billing, how to get started with insurance billing, a review of CPT and ICD9 codes, and finally, how to successfully implement ICD-10. Understanding the revenue cycle can be tricky for many of us who work in healthcare. Unless we are directly involved with patient accounts, the subtleties of the process may be lost on us. It is important to understand that there is a significant difference in the revenue cycle of a cash-based practice and one that incorporates insurance. The revenue process begins at the time the patient is scheduled. Getting claims processed successfully through a completed revenue cycle is dependent on many steps: accurate patient data, authorizations and referrals if required, correct charge entry and billing, and finally, understanding explanation of benefits, or EOBs. One of the most important parts of the revenue cycle process is insurance verification. Understanding the type of plan and the benefits will help you determine if a patient is eligible to use their insurances for your service. Whether you are doing the verification yourself, have staff completing this step, or utilize a billing service as a trusted partner, you need to make sure that you know what and how to ask to ensure the information you obtain is accurate. So what are some of the pros and cons of insurance billing? The pros: more patients. Insurance allows patients who couldn't afford your services to be able to get the benefits of them. Increased payments. While some insurance companies pay less than your charge, others pay more. Workers' compensation and insurance companies pay very well. And generally, more patients means more money to the bottom line. A more diverse practice. Having a mixture of patients, including insurance, workers' comp, and cash, means more diversity. More diversity means more ability to withstand shakeups in the regulatory environment or the economy. If the economy goes into a recession, many cash patients will be unable to afford your services, while insurance patients can keep coming. So what are the cons? More paperwork. Most of it, such as outcome assessments, should be done anyway, but some insurances have specific requirements. Billing insurance is a skill and it takes time to develop, so jumping in without an understanding can end up poorly by having rejected claims or delayed payments. Make sure you understand the process or find a partner to handle the insurance portion for you. The first thing you need to do before insurance billing is obtain a National Provider Identifier or NPI number. This is how insurance companies will recognize you. The National Provider Identifier is a 10-digit numeric identifier that must be used on claim forms submitted to payers by individuals and group organizations who meet the definition of a covered entity. These are random numbers that contain no coded information about you as the provider or the organization, and they're permanent numbers. They won't change on you. Many don't know, but there's two types of NPI numbers, and determining which one is right for you is a little tricky. So let me help. A type 1 NPI is a provider NPI. This is the only type of NPI you will need if you receive payments in your name or under your social security number as a solo practitioner. For practices with multiple providers, every provider within the practice must obtain an NPI. A Type 2 NPI is a group NPI. You will need a Type 2 NPI if you're incorporated or you're paid under your business name or corporate name or under a tax identification number. So if you are paid under that tax ID, you need to obtain both a Type 1 and Type 2 NPI. You can do so by going to the website on the screen and opting to apply. Once you log in and answer a series of security questions, you will have a wizard that will help you answer questions. If you run into trouble, feel free to contact their support department, but my recommendation is that you complete the process yourself online. Allowing them to complete it for you or mailing in the application will delay you receiving that number. If you complete it online, you will typically receive it the same day or within one business day. After obtaining your NPI, you'll be ready to approach an insurance company to establish yourself with them. But the big decision is whether or not you want to become an in-network provider or remain out of network. In an in-network scenario, you'll accept both HMO and PPO plans depending on your enrollment with the payer and the benefits on the plan. You may receive referrals from primary physicians. You'll be included on an insurance website or directory for their providers. Sometimes that can take up to a year. One of the biggest things is that you will have to credential and be approved to join the network with the insurance company. And some of these enrollment applications can take hours to complete. Being approved can also take 90 to 120 days, depending on if you filled out the application correctly and the turnaround time listed for each individual payer. Your contract is going to determine what codes you can bill. You will also have shorter claim filing times. So there's something called timely filing limitations, which tells you from the date of service how long you have to submit the claim successfully to the payer. In an in-network scenario, that's going to be much shorter. You're also going to see lower reimbursements on average, from $40 to $70 per hour. In an out-of-network scenario, you're going to see benefits more for PPO plans. You'll submit procedures, acupuncture, office visits, and manual therapy codes. So you won't be limited by your contract, but by the plan specifics. The enrollment process for out-of-network is much faster. You need to notify the payers of your information and make sure you're added to the database, but you don't have the 90 to 120 day turnaround time. The timely filing limit is going to be longer for out-of-network, sometimes up to 365 days, depending on the payer. And you'll see higher reimbursements, on average 170 to 190 per hour. Billing insurance companies require both a CPT and an ICD-9 code. The ICD-9 code is what will transition to ICD-10. Consider these codes the explanation to the payers of what you did and why you did it. When you document your notes, they need to clearly state the description supporting the codes used. These are an example of some of the codes commonly reimbursed for acupuncture services. The CPT explains the what, and the ICD-9 and ICD-10 explain the why you needed to perform the services that you did. Depending on the services that you performed, you're going to use one or more of these codes to tell the insurance company what you did. Some codes are time-based, meaning that you'll need multiple units, while others are not. Understanding the definition and when it is appropriate to use the codes is an extremely important part of the process. This is a list of some of the ICD-9 codes commonly used when billing acupuncture services. Not all of these codes are reimbursable for every insurance. It's important to understand the payer policies, which define what each payer believes is an appropriate, medically necessary diagnosis for services that they will reimburse. Stay tuned for future webinars where we will cover these payer policies and how to understand them. Those ICD-9 codes we just reviewed are going to turn to ICD-10 codes as of October 1, 2015. So what are ICD-10 codes? The International Classification of Diseases 10th Revision, or ICD-10, was endorsed by the 43rd World Health Assembly in 1990 and came into use in the World Health Organization, or WHO, member states in 1994. The classification is the latest in a series which has its origins all the way back to the 1850s. The first edition, known as the International List of Causes of Death, was adopted by the International Statistical Institute in 1893. WHO took over the responsibility for ICD at its creation in 1948, when the 6th revision, which included causes of morbidity for the first time, was published. The World Health Assembly adopted the WHO nomenclature regulations that stipulate use of ICD in its most current revision for mortality and morbidity statistics by all member states in 1967. The U.S. implemented ICD-10 for mortality in 1999, but we have failed to keep up with other countries who implemented ICD-10 12 plus years ago. Now that I've reviewed the background of ICD-10, let's look at some of the differences between ICD-9 and ICD-10. The first noticeable difference is the field length. ICD-9 codes are up to 5 characters, while ICD-10 codes can go up to 7 characters. The second difference is the gross number of available codes. ICD-9 has approximately 14,000 codes, where ICD-10 will have roughly 69,000 available codes. These codes will add flexibility for when new codes are needed. With such a large change in the number of codes, you can be sure that there will be differences in your coding, so you'll need to understand how to effectively search for codes under the new system. Code composition also changes. For ICD-9, the first character could be alpha or numeric, while all others were numeric. In ICD-10, the first is always going to be an alpha. The second character will always be numeric, and the following characters can be either alpha or numeric. Some additional differences is that ICD-10 is generally more specific than ICD-9, allowing descriptions of etiology and causation, complications, detailed anatomical location, and lateralization. For example, ICD-9 codes do not include laterality, while ICD-10 codes will often identify right versus left. In this instance, the code for open fracture of the head of the radius in ICD-9 is 813.15. The code does not specify laterality. Comparing this to ICD-10, code S521.22c, displaced fracture of the head of the left radius, initial encounter for open fracture type 3A, 3B, or 3C. You can see that it's much different coding in ICD-10. ICD-9 is over 40 years old and is a medical coding system that is outdated. It also has some limitations that are addressed in ICD-10. Primarily, ICD-9 lacks clinical specificity to accurately process and reimburse claims. It also fails to capture key details of patient conditions for recording and exchanging pertinent clinical information. And finally, with only 5 characters in length, there are code ranges with no numerals left. This makes it difficult to account for complexity and severity in an orderly and easy-to-use manner. ICD-10 codes refine and improve operational capabilities and processing by including detailed health reporting and analytics, detailed information on condition, severity, comorbidities, complications, and location, expanded coding flexibility by increasing code length to 7 characters, and finally, improving operational processes across the healthcare industry by classifying detail within codes to accurately process claims and reimbursements. If you're familiar with the ICD-9 book currently, I'm sure you all like to read it in your spare time. You will notice that there are significant changes to the layout of the ICD-10 book, so we wanted to include a cross-reference here for you. Hopefully you're still with me and I haven't scared you off, because there are ways to implement ICD-10 successfully. And I want to provide you some steps to success, 6 of them. The first is to assess, create, and assign. Number 2, code translations. 3. Chart review, 4. Technology evaluation, 5. Staff education, and 6. Monitor for success. Step 1. Assess, create, and assign. Assess. Assess your current workflow and who will be impacted by the ICD-10 transition. Create an implementation plan with a timeline, resource allocation, a budget, and benchmark performance. Assign. Identify an ICD-10 practice champion. For many of you, that is just going to be you. For those of you with staff, you'll need to identify training by role. Step 2 is code translation. The first part of this step is to complete an ICD-9 usage analysis. Look at the codes that you're currently using. Many of you not billing insurance are still completing a super bill to provide to the patient to bill themselves. Look at what you're providing them, and based on the outcome, prioritize the codes by how often you use them. Take those codes and map them to ICD-10. Create a practice cheat sheet and resources for everyone to use so you can practice. If you have a trusted billing partner or vendors, reach out to them to see if this is something they're going to provide for you. Step 3 is chart reviews. Whether it's through the ICD-10 transition or just a random audit of yourself or others in your practice, chart reviews are important. Look at your charts for each provider and ask yourself questions. Do your provider's notes accurately reflect what was done during each encounter? And do those notes support the codes that you build? Document any charting gaps and make sure you revisit your chart reviews to ensure that those changes have been made. Step 4 is a technology evaluation. For those of you that are currently billing or using software to perform any of your daily tasks, you need to talk to your vendors. Ask them if they're 5010 compliant. Identify all of those systems and processes and reach out to those vendors. Ask if you are going to be required to submit test claims for ICD-10 or if they're going to take care of that for you. And develop an implementation plan based on their answers. Step 5 is education. Evaluate your staff needs. If you have staff members, figure out what training method they are going to benefit most from. Is it off-site training, webinars, or possibly a consultant? Complete an introduction to ICD-10 and education. Practice, evaluate, and refine using ICD-10 codes. Step 6 is monitor for success. Test your ability to code in ICD-10. Challenge yourself. Benchmark performance, identify any problem areas, and monitor rejections and denials. Come this deadline, simply sending claims and not following up on them is not going to cut it. You need to make sure that you're monitoring those claims and immediately addressing any rejections that they have. The reality is there will be more rejections. Understanding how to deal with them and resolve them is going to be a challenge, but you can do it. Talk to your billing partners or your staff. Familiarize yourself with everything. Remember your ICD-10 steps for success. Assess, create, and assign, code translations, chart reviews, technology evaluation, staff education, and monitoring for success. In review, ICD-10 is coming. ICD-10 is not optional. Dates of service beginning October 1, 2015 and forward must be coded using ICD-10. Something to note, you are going to have a period of dual coding. If you're still billing after the October 1 deadline for dates of service prior to October 1, you have to use an ICD-9 code. In addition, if you're billing for workers' compensation, ICD-9 codes may still be used after October 1, but you won't know unless you talk to that vendor. Ask them if they are going to be transitioning based on the current deadline. ICD-10 is a new language. It is not just an annual update. If you're interested in purchasing those ICD-10 books or looking at the resources in your spare time, here are some resources and links that you can use to check out the information pertaining to ICD-10. Thank you for your time today. Please visit us on our website, join our blog, or check us out on Facebook, Twitter. If there's any topic that you would like to see covered or have any questions whatsoever, please reach out to us. We are here to help and happy to hear from you. Have an amazing day.